I'm curious now, who's your pick among the newcomers then in pay TV? So we're looking away from traditional cable companies, things like that. Who's your MVP?
I mean, I feel weird saying this is a newcomer, but you can't argue with what Netflix is doing.
Sure.
If whether you have cable or don't have cable, in the US, 2/3 of you with cable have Netflix. It's kind of a stunning number of subscribers. And really, if you said today from scratch, I'm going to create a company that has the intellectual property that Netflix now controls and the amount of hit shows that they own outright, it's almost impossible. So Netflix came together almost by accident. It was a service that was basically just rebroadcasting other people's stuff that dabbled in originals that had some hits and has gone to the tune of about $6 billion a year in creating this massive firewall of originals where, other than Disney, which obviously owns a ton of originals, and maybe Comcast, there is nobody out there. Like, if you and I had $20 billion to start a streaming service, that wouldn't get us to half of what Netflix has now. That's a very hard business to go after.
Yeah, I think most fools are familiar with the Netflix story. There's one data point that I'll mention here to emphasize what is I think will shape up to be a really nice tailwind for Netflix long term. So there's this latest Piper Jaffray Taking Stock with Teen survey. I think you've heard of this, Dan. And
yes, they
said that Netflix and YouTube accounted for 70% of the daily video consumption among teenagers. 70%. So there's an honorable mention for Alphabet's YouTube. I know that service has started to offer an ad-free experience with the monthly subscription. They also have their own YouTube TV bundle. But in the same survey, cable TV's share of daily consumption among teens stood at just 60%, and that's down from 30% just 3 years ago. And I bring that up because, Dan, you and I have discussed this before. It's the very real potential for younger consumers and TV subscribers to basically grow up never having access to these traditional pay TV packages, meaning they'll never really miss it or have the desire to sign up for it as they grow older because there's all these other alternatives. And I do think there's something there.
Yeah, and there's also a seismic shift of my generation, and I'm, 18 years older than you, something like that. We wanted the bigger television. I went from like the 13-inch black and white television to now I have like a 60-inch big wall television. My son will happily watch, quote, TV, YouTube or whatever, on his phone in a room that has a big television, that has YouTube on it if he wanted to be watching those things. I think that's a seismic shift. And you're right, you can't miss something you don't have. That said, I do think as people get older and they get into relationships and they have kids, cable TV starts to make more sense. And I think that's kind of the firewall for the industry. You don't have kids yet, but like if I want to watch the NFL and my wife wants to watch a Lifetime movie and my son wants to watch Cartoon Network, I could probably buy all those things in streaming packages, but it's easier to have cable. And I do think that is going to protect the industry. Young people also live in dorm rooms and are not used to having a big house, yet at some point most of them go out and get a decent sized house. So I don't think this is the end of cable as some have predicted.
Sure. And with that, it's just to keep in mind, we've seen similar trends though, where a new market will go without something that the more developed markets experience. They think it's necessary. But I think about, for example, how mobile phones are the primary computing device in a lot of developing markets. And so, PC markets are, if you think about personal computers, they aren't taking as much of a hold, as much of the market in those regions. And it just kind of changes the equation entirely for how people are using their computers, how people are using their mobile phones. And it's interesting to see how that will evolve for this younger generation now where, for example, they're watching it all on this, 5-6 inch screen on their phones.